and they trapped all the salmon that came up the river. And then they moved them. They drove them in trucks. Up, I think it was up to Wenatchee, but they drove them to another tributary where they didn't want to go, right? And then they fenced them off. They put fences in the river to prevent them from going. And they tried to go back. Hey, man, we're in the wrong place. This is not where we're supposed to do our thing. You know, we got to go way up there. But anyway, but eventually they had to do their thing because, you know, you can't. Anyway, and so they spawned, but there was not enough food. Predictably, every salmon subspecies is uniquely adapted to a particular set of local conditions, right? So in those days, they thought, okay, we want to save these guys, so we're going to just transplant them. But they didn't know enough about salmon to know that that was just not going to work, because those salmon were evolved to hatch out, you know, way the heck up there, right? And all the food is different, everything's different, right? The temperature of the water, everything's different. And so it didn't work, and they went extinct, and that was the end of the June hogs. But they tried, and the mantra in those days was, we can have fish in power too, right? That was what they kept telling the public, that we can develop the river in all these ways that we're telling you about. They had these plans going way back to the 1930s. You know, all these dams were planned out. And they kept telling the public, which was concerned. The public was very apprehensive about all these dams because the public knew that the salmon were, you know, really valuable. In those days, it was a backbone of our economy, right? Logging and salmon is what made the Northwest the wealthy place that it is today, right? So people were very concerned, but they were swayed by Corps of Engineers publicity people, basically, who told them that we could have salmon and we could have power and still have our salmon. And it turned out to be completely false. So that's what's happened to our resource. You know, and this is our resource. That's where all the different kinds of values are woven together, if you think about it, right? I mean, the commercial values are quite clear. You know, this is an extremely valuable resource that would arguably restoring some part, right? We're not going to restore, you know, a big part of it, but a small part would return jobs and dollars to the economy to make it all very worthwhile. But so economically, but then also, right, intrinsically, and there's something just so compelling about the story of a salmon, right? That suggests that maybe reducing that set of values to economic values, just to a cost benefit, even though that's a good argument too with salmon, because they are so economically valuable, right? But if you think about their lives, what they do, there's something more there. There's arguably a value that attaches to the salmon run itself, because right, the story it's an ancient story of adaptation to a unique set of local conditions. Every salmon subspecies is the unique genetic signature of a place, right? And that's a deeper kind of value than just economics, right? Than just dollars. And then think of the virtue, think of the character, the sentiment that is associated with the salmon, right? The loyalty to home. They insist they have to go back to where they came from, right? And if you stop them, then they'll just pound their head against the obstruction. They'll just keep trying to jump over that obstacle, you know, until they die, you know, or they finally make it over, because they're so fiercely loyal to their home, to where they have to go, and you know, and they're just so strong. You know, how many animals can swim a couple thousand miles in the open ocean, and then upriver another couple thousand miles? You know, fighting a whitewater raging current the whole way. It's really, and they don't eat either. They stop eating once they hit, most of them. That's why they're so hard to catch. A steelhead, you know, it's easier to catch because they'll still eat, but other salmon and steelhead are unusual too, in other respects, because steelhead will survive, they'll spawn and they'll survive. But all the other 6 Pacific salmon species all die. They spawn only one time. Right? So they know when they start their journey, they don't know, of course, but tragically, maybe some part of them knows. But when they start their journey, that's their final journey, right? You know, they're going through the stages of the cross, or whatever, right? All the way, they're sacrificing themselves so that their offspring can thrive and live, right? And that ecosystem can thrive. Yeah?
Don't they make choices, though? Like multiple runs, and some years it could be 4 or 5, depending on, we don't really know what influences their choice.
The steelhead?
Other Chinook and other salmon also will do multiple runs, and not as a juvenile, but as an adult, and it depends on different factors. I don't really understand of
Yeah.
whether they choose to pursue it all the way or to turn back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that sort of like choice and agency is interesting.
Choice and agency. They sure act. If you study their lives, they sure act a lot like they're making these very sophisticated choices and decisions. They really act like people. And indigenous people thought of them, they weren't ignorant and childish, but they had these stories about how the salmon, lived in their own societies and how they put on their costumes to go back home, but they had their culture under the ocean, right? And they do change color too. When they're silvery when they're out in the ocean, but when they hit the fresh water, they go through these powerful transformations. They change color and their faces, their whole bodies change. And so there's something really, and then they do make choices, right? The females fight for territory, and the males fight for dominance. The females want to get the best gravel to lay their eggs, right? Because some gravel is much better. And then the males they just want to get the females, and they fight each other to be dominant. Anyway, it's fascinating though. Their courtship rituals, you can go watch them spawning up, like on Eagle Creek if you want to go, not this time of year, but anyway, it's fun to go watch, and they have all these little rituals that they do, and they select each other. It's really beautiful. The female digs a nest in the gravel with her tail, is how she'll dig a big Chinook will dig an 18-inch long nest and about a foot deep, and then when they lay their eggs, they cover them back up with gravel. It's kind of like a bird. Anyway, all right, so I did not pass around, did I? No, I didn't pass around the attendance sheet, so everyone was here today, and don't worry about it. I do that because I'm remiss administratively sometimes, because I just want to do philosophy. Hopefully we can get this damn thing fixed. I'll mention it to the other professor. Okay. That's neat. Alright. Oh, there aren't very many bad states around here. If you go to the south, to Georgia or Alabama, they have some nasty ones. Moccasins and the water, very poisonous in the water. Very scary. I would